it doesn't matter where, what, who you are, as long as you're the best at something, people are gonna attack you. They're gonna blame you, they're gonna try and shame you, they're gonna try to push you down because of jealousy and ignorance. And well, when you are as great as Valve, literally the owner of pretty much the whole gaming market, there's a lot of people very upset with you. A lot of people like AAA development, AAA companies that want to push you down a little bit. Even a little bit of those lawmakers are trying to get at you because they fear you.
Yeah, I didn't think that covering Valve would bring us to this position, but here we are. This is a pretty damn spicy video. And there's a big question, right? How can you tell when someone is actually trying to manipulate you? We're in a world of deepfakes, clickbait, there's a lot of stuff going on. It can be hard to tell. Today, though, we get to talk about a very specific example happening within games. It's how a small independent game studio with the backing of
Russia.
one of the world's largest militaries just put a game out on Steam. It's a game designed to reframe a current live conflict for an international audience in terms of nationalistic propaganda, and
Oh, wow. That is just nasty.
it's one that Valve is seemingly, well, happy to have on their platform because it is there on Steam. And that's even
This is just questionable. Oof. I wonder what's Valve gonna do because no one wants this. No one supports Russia. No one wants to deal with any of this garbage. But, I mean, Dota and CSGO are pretty much ran by Russians at this point. And, well, if Russia threatens to ban Steam from Valve, well, Steam in Russia, I should say, then I wonder how that will turn out. Oh man, this is a situation.
with players and international governments decrying the move and giving them flack. And of course, for Valve themselves, a situation that forces them to make a controversial editorial decision is pretty much their worst case scenario. Their entire MO is to be hands off, to let customers, devs, and publishers hash stuff out on their store using their tools, but not really with a lot of their intervention. Now, by Valve's logic, their setup handles a situation like this. Customers can leave a negative review, they can say they're not interested in the game. Technically, the system should handle itself, but the problem for Valve is many of those customers think that a US company should probably be doing something different. But to really understand things today, we first have got to dive into the game itself. Here it is. It's called Squad 22 Zov. It's a free-to-play isometric
Bro, what is this? I mean, did they really put a woman there? Well, at least she's admitting, but damn, the Russian propaganda really goes far, huh?
called Squad 22 Zov. It's a free-to-play isometric military shooter, basically a small-scale indie title that could easily be lost amongst the hundreds that release in Steam every week. And when you look at it, yeah, it does kind of seem to play just like Door Kickers. But what it doesn't share with Door Kickers is a setting. So this, in a very ripped from the headlines fashion, per its own store page description, quite literally promises that players can explore campaigns related.
Wait, is is this with the support of the Russian government or not? Because if it isn't, but if it is, again, that's going to be problems. That's going to be again. Listen, Russia's not going to think twice about banning Steam. And again, Dota and CS:GO literally are Russian games. Not fully, but the majority of the player base is from there.
Related to the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the 2022 through to the present day invasion of Ukraine. This game. The page says it's based on the experiences of those doing on the ground fighting in what the game calls the special military operation. Which, if the Zov thing didn't exactly clue you into it, yes, this is in fact some Russian military backed propaganda. And that bit is not opinion, it's actually overt, and it is stated on the store page of this game, which reads, quote, game is officially recommended by the Russian military for its use as a basic infantry tactic manual for cadet and young army training.
I mean, of course, they're gonna make some indie game a recommendation for military training because the trampolines did so great, because the cookware on top of tanks is doing so good. I mean, technically, this is probably the most technologically advanced thing they have done in forever. So, I mean, It's a step up, maybe?
You might be asking, what's Yun Army? I'd never heard of it, and the answer is kind of fun, so I'm glad you hypothetically asked. Yun Army is a preteen army cadet organization for children established by Vladimir Putin in 2015, and I could tip you at my own biases and maybe just call it the Putin Youth. But really what's going on here is beyond
Damn,
obvious. We
true.
can add to all this the promise from the game's own website that it was designed with, quote, information support by the main military political directorate of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, as well as the input of active military consultants, and actually they said that, well, it was the military that commissioned the project, though they would not fund it. So overall, it feels relatively reasonable to describe this game as a state-backed thing, even if, of course, the developers told PC Gamer that funding for the devs and the game came from a private investor. Obviously, that could be quite literally anyone. I think the bit that matters the most is, well, who did the commissioning? And in that context, oh boy, the trailer makes a lot of sense. It's animated scenes of Russian troops helping protect the region from NATO and Ukrainian invaders who go as far as blowing up ambulances full of civilians. Now, that of course is a war crime that Russian forces themselves have been
Yeah. I mean, this is not even a question. I mean, rewrite history. That's the only thing they can do at this point.
accused of. So, what do we make of this overall situation, this strange game appearing in Steam? Well, first of all, it does very obviously back up a state narrative. And that's not a uniquely Russian thing. Obviously, there are US, UK, and many other games that do the exact same, that tacitly or overtly back up their own state's narrative. Here, though, the difference is that the tie is so very overt that it's, of course, so inherently controversial because it's extremely timely, and also the position that Valve themselves are in. Because make no mistake, getting this game on Steam was a coup for these developers. In fact, the devs actually boasted, right, that they underwent, quote, months of hard work with the moderation team of Steam, and they portrayed the whole process as Steam trying to find reasons to ban them, while
Based.
they assert that they are portraying nothing illegal. And turns out a lot of this stuff about the rules is what could come back to bite them in the ass. So let's actually talk about store policy and where Valve fits into all this. First up, something obvious that we all know. There is nothing in Steam's publishing rules that say that a state-sponsored or military-sponsored game can't be sold on their platform. Ever heard of a little game called America's Army, right? That's one example. Now, as for the things that they're not in favor of, well, their rules prohibit hate speech, they cover content that's illegal in territories where it's sold, they cover monetization options and blockchain implementation stuff. That's what's there about basically what you're not allowed to put on Steam. And they've even got an open clause that they can use to remove any content that, quote, is patently offensive or intended to shock or disgust viewers. That's a very broadly worded thing that basically means Valve can kind of do what they want. They can interpret their own rules as they will. But the fundamental thing, right? If a government wants to make a video game and publish that on Steam, they can do so, right? They can do it. On a purely material level, Steam doesn't really care if your game is propaganda or if it's a, say, recruitment tool or what.
I mean, let's be real, this goes a little bit further than just money. Gabe has already proven that money, while it matters, is not exactly the main thing why Steam does a lot of its decision making. Okay, you can argue that it's for long-term money making. True, maybe, but doesn't matter. Okay, there are moral lines that Gabe doesn't like to cross, and this is fucking probably one of them. Okay, no one wants this. This is shit. This is retarded. Everyone knows what is bad, except a huge portion of Americans who think that Russia's the best thing ever. Hey. It is what it is. I don't know why they're like that.
What country's armed forces a game represents. As long as it's not breaking the rules, they will let the market decide whether or not that game succeeds. And obviously, you're thinking about America's Army Proving Ground. That's been on Steam, it has been for a decade, and the America's Army games are a series used literally overtly as recruitment and training tools and software for the US military. And of course, that's to say nothing of some other controversial games that have used American military experience in consultant or development roles. The obvious one that comes to mind is 6 Days in Fallujah. And that's the thing, a game being state-backed is not against the rules. And thinking about America's Army or 6 Days in Fallujah, both of those do fulfill the same criteria that Squad 22 does. So, if this new game wasn't allowed on Steam, then Steam would have to go and pull America's Army and other similar games as well. And I think we can all see a logically coherent, right, position
Yeah, nothing logically coherent about this at all. Everyone knows that there's a difference.
from Valve. Basically, the store will handle it, these are our rules, and they really don't want to be wading into subjective or editorial things, like, say, in this position. Of course, though, Valve are free to do that, everyone else is free to react, and quite a lot of reactions have happened. To start, there's the most obvious one. So even before this game was on Steam, the Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation was calling out the game's early tests as being a problem. Then since launch, Ukrainian audiences have already been raising the game's existence to their own legislators, and this is where the developers being so adamant that they have nothing, quote, illegal in the game might actually come to bite them in the ass. Because depending on the content of Squad 22 Zov, there is actually potential for this to come under Rule 6 of Steam's publishing terms. Here's the quote: "Content that violates the laws of any jurisdiction in which it will be available. This game is available on Steam in Ukraine." Yeah, that's a pretty obvious exhaust port in the developer's plan. Now, Steam will restrict access to games whenever legal bodies get involved. This has actually happened before, where Valve have had to step in, they've had to pull games from the platform, and that was actually the case earlier this year with Fursan Alaska, the Knights of the Alaska Mosque. I probably bungle the pronunciation, but basically UK counter-terrorism police caused that game to be blocked, and they did that by reaching out to Valve on the grounds of those legal requirements. That game got pulled, so it's hardly a stretch to imagine there'll be a similar update pretty soon for this game. Of course, we can also add on to all of this the whole sanctions aspect here, because with the game being so clearly linked to the Russian armed forces and the developer being based in Moscow, there's the likelihood that any accumulated earnings from microtransactions would have to be withheld unless...
I'm not gonna lie, I was more comfortable when the biggest problem with politics and gaming was woke. This seems very, very, very not it.
Valve would, want to go and breach sanctions and trade with Russian banks, which would probably get them in a lot of trouble. But regardless, since Valve have basically okayed the release for now, it is seemingly entirely up to outside pressures to identify whether anyone should be selling this game. Now, what we can also do is take a look at the market, because the game's there, it's on Steam, and so far it's safe to say that players are not impressed. I'll begin with the Steam reviews. There really is a long-held tradition of Steam reviews and geopolitics cross...
Bro, what is with squatting? What's with the squatting?
Into each other. There'll be more on that soon, but as of right now, it's 62% positive in its user reviews. There's only 354 of them. The game is there for free, and
I mean, these are probably Russian bots to keep it positive to a degree, I guess.
Understandably, the review section is a battleground between people calling it out as propaganda or misinformation and those who are, of course, aligned with the viewpoints of the developers of this game. Now, it's not a big game. It's a small game. The highest concurrency is at 50 as of the time of writing, and ironically, it can't even be boosted to a friendly audience as, per SteamDB, this game cannot be activated in the Russian Federation. Okay, quick second, there's actually been an update to this story. I'm recording this just before...
Wait, what do you... Yeah, so these are definitely bots, okay? This kind of touches upon on US politics, but again, a lot of people in the US think that people in Europe support Russia. There's literally no fucking one almost in Europe who supports Russia. Just saying, okay? You can go with fucking Marie Le Pen or whatever fucking autistic retard shit you want to go, and Trump can tweet about her winning and whatnot. She lost 50 times over. It's never happening. This shit gets so wild. Like, how do people know so little about, well, everything?
Republish it. So here's essentially what's went down. There are changes that are present on Steam where basically the game is now available in the Russian Federation and it's now not available in Germany and Ukraine. So those problems that we talked about, where as an example, if the game was violating the law of a country it was being published in on Steam, that could cause Valve to pull it, well, it seems they're basically wise to that as a potential risk, and well, now it is something that people can get in Russia. I suppose that's probably an audience who would gel with this game a bit better. And, well, there is the way that it's obviously got a current military context. Obviously, America's Army, did when it was a thing initially. In this case, though, it's very much more tailored to a specific ongoing thing. Okay, that's the update. Back to old me with the rest of the analysis. I mean, with the framing of it as a training tool and even something available to the youth, you would have imagined it would be there in Steam in Russia, but no, it's not. This is a release for the whole rest of the world. It's not exactly been a massive release, but you know what? That all may be the point. And that's where this video gets, weird, uncomfortable, right? So the audience that we're giving it right now, technically, as we're covering this as a piece of news, does mean there will be more eyeballs on this project. Now, that is something that's inherently risky, and it's why a lot of the point of this video is to give you a lot of context, right? And why the point here is to arm you with the ability to see these things as they happen. Now, one good side of this is, you know what? Games are globally important. Games matter, art matters, stories matter. They're how we communicate and discuss our cultural values. That's a good thing we can take away from this. Everybody wants to pile into games because games actually do matter. They're a serious medium. But that also means that games can be used in the same way that any other piece of media can. And here's the thing. We're used to video games in broadly a peacetime...
Wait. I just noticed. So, the propaganda here is
be used in the same way
that Ukraine is attacking Russia? Because this is how they try to frame this. Oh my god, yeah. Because Russia already did the thing where they said that, oh, well, we have officially legally taken over these parts of Ukraine. So, they're now trying to frame this as Ukraine invading Russia. Oh, shit. I mean, fuck. How stupid can you get?
That any other piece of media can. And here's the thing. We're used to video games in broadly a peacetime context. So, this Donald Duck, not that Donald Duck from the 40s. If you get my point. So, to understand the intent of stories then, and how we should appraise them, we should keep all of this stuff in mind, especially those of us who, like me, grew up in the post-Cold War peace dividend era where we didn't really think about these things as much. But of course, we all now live in an information environment that is unlike any that our species has faced before. Revisiting Squad 22 with that in mind, well, that people are outraged by this game is obviously part of the plan. And if this had 99% negative ratings and 1% positive ratings, you could actually see that as a win, because guess what? That 1% positive is the radicals. And it's actually shock-style dynamics like that that are specific.
I mean, normal people are not gonna even buy this for the most part. That's like the reality here.
Typically used to target, say, foreign fighters for recruitment. In this situation, though, well, it is sitting on a mixed rating. And for the people behind this game, that is absolutely far better. It's also far more in line with modern Russian informational warfare. Because if something is mixed...
Considering no one wants to deal with this, it's just gonna fade into obscurity. And now that it made a slight splash that some shit like this even exists in the first place, it's probably gonna be who fucking cares in literally 2 days. No one's gonna talk about this. Oh yeah, what is this? Oh, have you heard? Yeah, it's literal Russian propaganda. Oh, okay. Boop. There it is. So, it's fine.
Then that creates ambiguity. Now a hallmark...
Well, it would be better if it didn't exist, but I mean... it's not gonna achieve anything.
Of anti-democratic, anti-free market operation is to use those mechanisms against themselves. A very obvious example is the National Socialists of Germany were actually excellent at playing the game of democracy. They kind of won it and then they broke it, right? And if you'll pardon the, I guess, actual unhinged levels of whiplash here, to give you a market example of that, the Chin Pokemon South Park episode is kind of a satire of pop culture as an expression of a state's soft power. And that kind of brings us back to Valve, who are Americans. They are literally distributing state propaganda of a foe of their country. And that's a kind of interesting thing. And of course, they have been distributing state propaganda for a long ass time. Like, say, America's Army, right? But the obvious difference is now it's propaganda of a state that's hostile to their own. And they're doing it, why? Well, they're doing it because of their own, rather American, free market principles. Basically, ambiguity is the goal, use the stuff of the enemy against them. And most importantly, who it all clashes with are the audience, the customers. Now, for some European customers, right, this all just...
Do you think those cutscenes are made by AI? I kind of think they're made by AI.
This may seem like a continuation of themes that are playing out in the press, just that now it's maybe not happening in X, instead it's happening on another American platform that we all use. But to some American customers, this may seem like a betrayal of their own nation. The idea of an American company distributing a game called America's Army might seem completely fine, but the materials of a hostile nation, well, that is a little bit different. Someone could easily say, hey, you wouldn't sell arms to an opponent, why would you distribute their talking points for them?
I mean, you know, funny thing about wouldn't sell arms to your opponent.
That's, of course, an extremely uncomfortable position for Valve to be in, and I really do mean that in any way. They could say, we accept state-backed media that we agree with.
Listen, I'm not saying the US is selling arms to their opponents, but some three-legged organization definitely is.
And we're not going to have this Russian media thing on our platform, as has actually happened in many different platforms. But then the problem for Valve, if they engage with this on those terms, is, well, where do you draw the line, right? Will you only distribute things that, say, align with your own home country's foreign policy? I mean, that would sure blow up the already very fiery Taiwan and PRC situation that regularly goes on in the Steam reviews. There's been so many games, so much drama, all, yeah, that big beef. That whole thing, or say the Blitzchung situation, those just illustrate how none of this is a fun place to be in if you are Valve.
Oh, this is not what I wanted today. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, that was Billiard News. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. Ignore it. And, I mean, it's gonna go away. No one's gonna fucking care about the title with 3. Listen, the fact that a title... In the modern day, the fact that a title that's supposed to be propaganda sells the equivalent of 5 fucking copies is already humiliation enough. Don't let them buy more or get more copies. Then that looks better. Anyway, that was Billiard News. Bye.